Emily Parker sat still at the Easter table as her mother stood up with a wine glass and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Everyone, let's appreciate those who built real stability," she said before turning toward Emily. Unlike Emily, who still can't put a roof over her own head. The room went quiet as relatives shifted uncomfortably. Emily's father stared at his plate and made tiny cuts in his food. Her sister Chloe leaned over and whispered, "You're just jealous." Emily said nothing, but a spark she had buried years ago finally stirred. 2 weeks later, Emily invited Chloe for tea at a new address Chloe didn't recognize. When Chloe walked through the gate and saw the house, she stopped moving. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. "Mom, you need to come here right now," she said, her voice trembling. Emily watched her sister from the doorway, calm for the first time in years. She whispered to herself, 13 years, and it finally begins. Everything she planned had led to this moment, and she wasn't afraid of what came next. But to understand how Emily reached this moment, the story had to return to a Tuesday night in November 2022. Back then she lived in a tiny studio that shook whenever trucks passed by. "This is temporary," she used to tell herself while tightening the faucet handle that still leaked every 3 seconds. She worked as a cybersecurity analyst, her first real title after 4 long years of unstable contracts. She earned just enough to survive but never enough to breathe. And all the while her mother spread a different story, one that made Emily look helpless. What nobody outside the family knew was the reason Emily had student loans at all. At 18, 2 weeks before she started college, her mother sat her down at the kitchen table. "Sweetheart, your college fund didn't survive the market crash," she said with a sigh she had rehearsed. Emily cried as her mother hugged her and helped her fill out loan forms the next morning. She believed every word. Years later, Chloe bought a 4-bedroom house and their mother bragged to everyone. "Chloe saved wisely. She's always been responsible," she said proudly. Everything changed the night Uncle James called. Emily was debugging a firewall configuration when her phone buzzed. He never called, so she answered quickly. "Emily, I can't hold this anymore," he said, sounding nervous. "Your mother didn't lose your college fund. She withdrew it. All $42,000. Emily froze as he continued. "I watched her sign the papers. The money went straight into her joint account. 2 weeks later, Chloe used a down payment." Emily slid to the floor, unable to speak. The truth was worse than betrayal. It was intentional. Emily pressed the phone tighter against her ear as Uncle James whispered, "I told her it was wrong, but she shut me out for 2 years." The dripping faucet marked the silence between them like a timer counting down her old life. "I kept the bank statements," he added. "All of them. You tell me when you're ready." Emily finally breathed out a shaky, "Thank you." When the call ended, she lay on the cold kitchen floor staring at the ceiling stain. A pilot light inside her chest flickered off and then reignited with something harder than anger. That night, sleep never came. Emily opened her laptop at 2 a.m., created a spreadsheet and typed 3 columns. Income, savings, target. The target number had 7 figures because she refused to stay small anymore. "If confrontation gives liars a stage," she whispered, "I'll build my own stage." She saved the file and closed the laptop at 3:15 a.m. Her alarm was set for 6 and she forced herself into bed, knowing the real fight had just begun. In the morning she would smile at work like nothing had changed. The following Sunday her mother called with false sympathy dripping in every word. "Sweetheart, I heard about a cheap apartment near Milwaukee. Should I get the number?" Emily gripped the phone. "Mom, I'm not looking for a new place." Her mother made a soft sound. "Someone said your rent went up. Anyway, keep your options open. You don't want to struggle." After hanging up, Emily opened Facebook and saw 7 messages from relatives offering help she didn't need. Her mother had turned her into a family charity project without even asking how she was doing. Scrolling further, Emily noticed Chloe's new post, a photo of her remodeled kitchen with the caption, "So grateful for this space. Thanks, Mom, for believing in me." The post was dated November 17th, Emily's birthday. She placed her phone down and reopened her spreadsheet. She increased her monthly savings goal by $200, which meant cutting every luxury from her life. "Fine," she murmured. "Let's see how far discipline can take me." She refused to let her mother define her worth by square footage ever again. At work, the only person Emily trusted was Diane, a sharp-minded VP with silver hair and glasses hanging from a chain. One afternoon Emily asked, "Diane, what does it take to move up here?" Diane studied her quietly. "You're already doing the work. You just need to stop being invisible." She slid a thick folder across the desk. "Take this project. It's messy, overdue, and important. If you deliver, the executives will know your name." Emily took the file with steady hands. This was her first real step toward building a life no one could rewrite. For the next year, Emily poured herself into the hospital audit project. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14, surviving on coffee and meal prep chicken. She automated nearly half her paycheck into an investment account and pretended the money didn't exist. At home, she shared nothing about her progress because every time she mentioned work before, her mother brushed it off as, "that computer thing." The silence felt safer than being dismissed again. When the audit shipped early and under budget, the client renewed for 3 years and Diane sent her a short message, "Nice work. See me Monday." A year after that message, Diane called Emily into her office with a small smile. "You're ready," she said, handing Emily a new badge. The title read Team Lead. Emily felt a warmth move through her chest, but she didn't post it online or tell her family. She simply updated her spreadsheet that night and kept going. At Christmas, she visited Chloe's house where the walls smelled of fresh paint and money. Her mother drifted through the rooms bragging, "Chloe designed everything herself," and barely acknowledged Emily standing by the drinks table. During that visit, Chloe cornered her near the kitchen island. "Are you still renting that tiny place?" she asked with a sympathetic smile. Emily nodded. "Yes, for now." Chloe shrugged. "Well, at least you're saving something." Emily sipped her water, refusing to rise to the bait. Later, Chloe's husband Todd pressed a beer into Emily's hand and whispered, "Your mom talks too much. Don't believe everything." It was the kindest sentence she heard that entire night. A few months later, Emily received a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. The man introduced himself brightly. "Hey Emily, I'm Greg. Your mom gave me your number. She says you and I would hit it off." Emily deleted the message immediately. 20 minutes later her mother texted, "Greg owns his home outright. He's a real catch." Emily responded, "I didn't ask you to set me up." But her mother kept pushing, insisting that Emily was 31, single and renting, as if those were emergencies. Emily placed the phone face down and returned to her server migration. By that night, Emily finally understood what her mother valued. Not her career, not her achievements, but the optics of marriage and real estate. She deployed the server upgrade flawlessly and received a flood of celebratory messages from her team. Then she sat alone with a cup of tea and opened Zillow, not for Greg but for herself. Quietly, she started imagining what life could look like without her mother's shadow. 6 months later, after another promotion and a higher salary, she began driving through neighborhoods every Saturday. She wasn't searching for a house yet, she was searching for a feeling. That feeling finally appeared on a quiet hillside in West Hills. Emily parked her car and stared at a home with floor-to-ceiling windows glowing gold in the afternoon light. Inside, she imagined warmth instead of judgment, silence instead of comparison. The house had 4 bedrooms, a wraparound deck, and a sunset view that looked like painted fire across the valley. "This is mine," she whispered, surprising herself. She ran the numbers twice, called her financial advisor and made an offer before fear could talk her out of it. 3 weeks later, Emily sat at a long table in the title office signing document after document. When the final page slid toward her, she paused a moment before writing her name. The agent handed her a small key. It lay warm in her palm, heavier than she expected. Emily walked to her car, closed the door and let out a slow breath. She didn't call anyone, didn't text Chloe, didn't tell her mother. She simply drove to the house and stood inside it, letting the light fill the empty room. Moving in was quiet and simple. No truck, no crowd, no witnesses, just Emily and her old Civic packed with everything she cared about. Her footsteps echoed through the empty living room as she whispered, "This is home." Over the next weeks she bought furniture slowly. A deep gray couch, a sturdy maple table from an estate sale, and a bed frame that didn't creak. She painted the living room wall warm white, her arms aching by the second coat. When she finally stepped back, she smiled. The house was beginning to feel like a life. The only person Emily invited over was Diane. When Diane stepped inside, she looked up at the vaulted ceiling, then out through the glass wall at the sweeping valley. "This is stunning," she said softly. "Does your family know?" Emily shook her head. "Not yet." Diane studied her face. "You're not hiding this to punish them. You're protecting yourself." Emily poured her a glass of wine and whispered, "Maybe both." That night, after Diane left, Emily opened a file box she had been avoiding. At the top was the deed to her new home, crisp and official. Beneath it lay the envelope Uncle James had mailed her, the bank statement she hadn't fully read. Emily lifted it, held it for a moment and placed it in the drawer beside the deed. She wasn't ready yet. She told herself, soon but not tonight. Outside, wind brushed the tall trees, and the house felt like it was waiting with her. In March, Chloe hosted a birthday party for her daughter Lily. The backyard was crowded with relatives, balloons and a rented canopy. Emily arrived with a stuffed elephant and a card with $20 tucked inside. Lily hugged her leg before running off to play, leaving Emily smiling for the first few minutes. Then her mother pulled her toward a group of book club friends. "This is my youngest," her mother said proudly. "She's still finding her path." Emily tried to laugh it off, but her mother added, "Those tech titles change every month, don't they?" As Emily stood quietly, Chloe walked by holding a tray of cupcakes. "At least she has a good attitude about it," Chloe said lightly, not realizing the sting behind her words. The book club women smiled politely at Emily, unsure what to say. Emily forced a smile of her own. Then across the yard she saw Uncle James sitting alone in a lawn chair. Something in his expression made her walk toward him. When she sat down beside him, he nodded slowly like he already knew why she had come. "The bank statement I sent you," Uncle James said quietly. "Your mother's signature is clear. Date, amount, account number." Emily swallowed hard. "I haven't read it yet." He nodded again. "Take your time. It's not going anywhere." Across the yard, Emily's mother glanced in their direction. Her smile faltered for a second before she turned back to a conversation about Chloe's new garden pergola. Emily saw the flicker of worry in her mother's eyes. It was the first crack she had ever seen. That night, back in her peaceful house, Emily made chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table. She placed the manila envelope in front of her and rested her fingers on the flap. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she opened the envelope. She unfolded the statement and stared at the numbers. Deposits her grandmother had made each year, the growing balance, the final withdrawal. Her mother's signature sat at the bottom. Sharp, practiced, undeniable. Emily closed her eyes and whispered, "So it's all true." Emily called Uncle James immediately. "I read it," she said. Her voice didn't shake this time. "I'm not going to yell and I'm not going to beg." She looked out at the dark valley through the glass wall. "I'm just going to be ready when the time comes." Uncle James exhaled softly. "That's my girl," he said. They stayed quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet where understanding settles without needing more words. When the call ended, Emily washed her mug and began preparing herself for Easter. Easter arrived with a cold Oregon morning that slowly softened into sunlight. Emily parked down the street from Chloe's house and sat in her car for a moment, breathing in and out. Through the window, she saw relatives carrying dishes inside, children running across the yard, and her mother directing everything like a stage manager. Emily smoothed her blouse and walked toward the house. Inside, she exchanged greetings with cousins, hugged Aunt Patricia, and kissed Lily on the forehead. Then within minutes, her mother appeared. "Emily, you look thin. Are you eating?" she asked loudly. Emily smiled politely and moved toward the kitchen island. Todd drifted beside her with a plate of deviled eggs. "Brace yourself," he whispered. "Your mom is in performance mode." Emily raised an eyebrow. "She's been rehearsing the toast since Thursday," Todd added quietly. Emily didn't respond, but her stomach tightened. She had already decided she wasn't confronting anyone today, not yet. But after dinner she would choose her moment carefully. She wasn't here to argue, she was here to shift the story. After the meal, everyone gathered in the living room. Children settled on the floor with candy-filled baskets while adults claimed chairs and couches. Emily watched her mother step into the center of the room holding a wine glass like a queen preparing a royal speech. "I just want to say a few words," her mother began. She praised Chloe endlessly. the house, the renovations, the effort she put into hosting. Then her mother turned toward Emily and said softly, "We're all rooting for you, honey. One day you'll get there." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Chloe leaned over and whispered loudly, "There's no shame in renting, Emily. We all start somewhere." Aunt Patricia touched Emily's arm gently. "Your mother told me you're looking for a cheaper place. I know a wonderful landlord." Emily looked around the room and saw sympathetic eyes everywhere. Her mother had carefully crafted this version of her life and everyone believed it. Emily set down her glass quietly. She didn't argue. She simply waited for the right moment to plant the seed she'd been preparing for months. 10 minutes later, as Emily reached for her coat near the hallway, Chloe blocked her path. "Are you jealous?" she asked softly but loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. "Jealous of what?" Emily replied calmly. Chloe gestured around them. "This house. This life. Everything I worked for." Emily held her sister's gaze for 3 steady seconds. "I'm sure you did work for it," she said gently. Chloe blinked, unable to read her. She walked back into the living room, unsettled by Emily's sudden calm. Emily stepped back into the living room, her coat over her arm, and stopped where everyone could hear her. She turned toward Chloe with a soft smile. "I'd like to have you over for tea this Saturday," she said. "I moved recently." The room shifted almost instantly. A quiet ripple passed through the crowd as heads turned. Her mother stiffened. "A new place? What new place?" Emily shrugged lightly. "Nothing big. I'll text Chloe the address." Chloe nodded slowly, confused but curious, and Emily walked out without another word. That Saturday, Chloe arrived first. Her SUV rolled to a stop in the driveway, but she didn't get out right away. She stared at the house like it was a trick of the mind. When she finally stepped onto the walkway, her heels clicked against the stone as she whispered, "Emily, this is yours?" Emily welcomed her inside and let the silence speak. Chloe touched the granite island, ran her fingers along the stair railing and stared out through the wall of glass. Her voice trembled. "How did you afford this?" Emily answered simply, "I worked." 19 minutes later, their parents arrived. Their mother stepped into the entryway, stopped, and froze as her eyes traveled across the vaulted ceiling and sunlit living room. "What is this?" she whispered. Emily folded her hands. "My house. Welcome." Her father stood behind her mother, eyes wide, breath unsteady. He walked forward first, voice breaking as he said, "I'm proud of you, Emily." Their mother turned sharply. "Did you know about this?" He shook his head. For the first time in Emily's life, her mother looked genuinely unsure of her footing. Chloe stepped forward holding a single sheet of paper, the bank statement Emily had laid out moments earlier. She had read every line and her face was pale. "Mom, this money came from Emily's college fund." Their father sank into a chair, hands covering his face. "Gloria, you told me the fund lost value." Their mother's voice cracked as she insisted, "I did what was best for this family." Emily lifted her chin. "You stole from me and pretended it never happened." Her mother looked around the room and realized no one believed her anymore. Emily took a breath, steady and sure. "I'm not asking for the money back," she said. "But I am asking you to stop rewriting my life to make yours look better." The room felt still, like the house itself was listening. Her father nodded, Chloe wiped her eyes, and her mother stood quietly with trembling hands. Emily walked to the kitchen table and poured tea into 2 cups. "If you want to be in my life, you come as a guest, not as the narrator." Her mother had no answer. And for the first time, Emily felt free.